Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Now I'm joined with another friend of mine who I've met through the Growth Now community, through our mutual friend, Justin Shank. And I think this is now the fifth person from that community that I've had on the show. And I love bringing people in from that community and introducing them to my greater community of listeners, because there's some really amazing people that I've been able to meet through that community. So got on today. I'm just going to introduce her as a life coach for rule breakers, Pratiti Pathek. Pratiti, thanks for joining me today.
Hey Dan, how's it going? Thank you so much for having me today.
It's going great. It's going great. Glad you could join me, and really excited to see where we go with this conversation today. But before we get started with that, just introduce yourself in your own words. Who is Pratiti today?
Today, I am a real estate agent with Keller Williams, and I am also a life coach, as you mentioned, with Results by Design Coaching. It is the business I founded and created. I am a coach for rule breakers and trailblazers, and I primarily work with women. The men do get in every now and then, but I primarily work with women on just life's ups and downs, right? Challenges, obstacles through career, marriage, divorce, loss, health, money, you name it, anything that life can offer you that can be challenging at times.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me a little bit more about the title that you like to go by. Life coach for rule breakers. What does that mean? What in your eyes, what is that rule breaker?
So I think that there are a lot of social conditioning, social norms. There's a lot of rules that the rest of the world has for you. And what I mean by rule breaker, people, I don't mean lawbreaker. I just mean you are either following somebody else's set of rules that they've put out there for you, whether it's through culture, religion, society, your parents, your family background, other people, or you are breaking their rules and kind of going against the grain and following your own heart and your own intuition and just really being more in alignment with you. And I think that just aligns so much more with me because I felt like a rule breaker my whole life. I felt like I was always going against the grain and trying to fit into other people's boxes, if you will. I was trying to fit into two different cultures and societies, and ultimately just didn't really feel like I fit into either one, because while I was the black sheep and feeling like I was going against everybody else, which feels terrible, I also was going against myself too by trying to fit into everybody else's rules, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, definitely makes sense for the guy that lives in a house on wheels. Makes a lot of sense because, like you said, there's all these rules. Society says you'd go out and buy the house and live by those rules. And I got to a point where it's like, now we're going to live by our own rules, and do a little bit of get off the hamster wheel and do a little bit of unconditional living freely.
Yeah, because what ends up happening is you either people please to make everybody else happy, and the only person you're not pleasing then is yourself, which is what I always did. And then I also I went through a lot of getting picked on and bullied, and ultimately ended up being like the biggest bully to myself. So I beat myself up a lot and went through a lot of self-loathing just because, again, just constantly feeling like I wasn't doing it right.
Yeah. And how tough was that? I mean, I think if correct me if I'm wrong here, you came to this country when you were 2 years old, and you had mentioned that you were kind of trying to mesh these two cultures, which ultimately you decided you kind of wanted to create your own path. But how tough was that really, just to to try to fit in? And you said you did a lot of beating yourself up before finally you said, no, I'm done with this. Just tell me a little bit about what that whole process was of, trying to fit in and then getting to a point where it's like, you know what, I don't care if I fit in or not, I'm going to be me.
Well, that didn't come for a lot of years later, decades actually. But so growing up, I did come here when I was 2 years old, and I was very tomboyish, and that was me as a little girl getting picked on and bullied. Like, so it was very different in the early 70s. I was pretty much the only Asian in my school or in my neighborhood up until I was in, well, almost out of high school. But what what that did for me is get me into more of a masculine energy in my life of being a tomboy, which I very much enjoyed. I played football with the guys. I was one of the only two girls allowed to play football because I was tough like that. And at the same time, I made a lot of poor choices through trying to fit in. Like, I started smoking cigarettes when I was very young. And then when my parents found out that I was smoking cigarettes, that's when I started no longer fitting in with my culture and my household, because my parents, their background, they were very strict, and also they had a lot of fears of the unknown, as most of us do. And what was unknown to them was the norm of America, right? What was going on here around, going to school was very different atmosphere than what they grew up going to school. Much stricter culture, certain things girls and boys did not do, which was very different than here. I definitely wasn't a girl that was allowed to go hang out at the movies with my girlfriends or go do sleepovers or after school specials. My parents were nervous and worried and scared about that. So I think for me, I always felt like an outcast both ways, because I wasn't allowed, like, my friends were only my friends in school. I didn't get to hang out with them outside. So, of course, that put me in a little more of an awkward situation, or feeling like I didn't fit in when they were talking about things that they did over the weekend and I wasn't a part of it. And the same way with my parents, there wasn't a whole lot of friends on my parents' side because they were new to the country and just making friends themselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So fast forward a little bit. I want to talk about a time in your life that, I'm sure is really any parent's nightmare, which was the loss of your son. He was only 17 years old. You're a single mom. What was that like, and how have transformed yourself to just keep, putting one foot in front of the other each day?
Well, I think first, um, as I'm talking about making poor choices, so one of the choices I had made, which I won't say was a poor choice, I had started dating my son's father, and my parents, of course, were very against it. He was not an Indian man. He did leave, and I ended up being a single mom. So the very first transitional moment of my life where I made that decision to stop fitting in, trying to fit into what other people wanted, where it was the first time in my life where I was going to go against everybody's rules. And I decided to become the single mom, which nobody around me wanted. Um, so it was a very lonely decision. And from that, everything in my life started turning around because of my family, my friends, everybody in my life really started seeing the real me, which was a good mom, hardworking. I worked two jobs, went to school, did all the things. My kid was a very good kid. Now, fast forward 17 years later, my son, Devan, probably one of the most amazing people I've ever met, very well rounded individual, basketball, baseball, soccer, football, hockey kind of guy, skateboard, snowboard, anything with a board. Very cool cat. Everybody was friends with him. He was a very popular kid. And then at the same time, he was surrounded by me, my parents, my aunts, my uncles. He learned how to, he knew three languages just like me. And did very well in school. And so, very well rounded guy. At 17 years old, the night before his junior class trip, he climbed a high voltage structure and touched a wire by accident and had fallen 40 feet. So I he is my only child, so it completely changed my life. I um literally think I just wanted to jump off a bridge every single day for over 2 years. It was more than devastation for me. In my mind, like literally nobody up until that point had seen me the way that my son saw me. So in my mind, until this day, I think Devan is probably the only person that has ever just very unconditionally loved me and accepted me exactly the way I am, and would have had my back on anything. Obviously, like most children probably, have that relationship with their parent. We're very close.
Yeah. Yeah. So the when you received the news, um, what was your first reaction to that?
So interesting. I had I had gotten the phone call. It came in from his cell phone. It was a sergeant who pretty much told me everything that had happened outside of that my son had already not made it through that accident. So they had told me, touched a high voltage structure, climbed this structure, touched a wire, fell 40 feet, and was being taken to a hospital. And so at the time, I was in the process of selling my house and we were living with my parents. And I remember just putting my hand over the phone. I could just hear it in the sergeant's voice as soon as he said, "Are you Devan Pathek's mom?" I said yes, and then like screamed down for my father. And we were the only two home, and it was about 9:41 when I got that call in the evening. And I knew, so I got off the phone. I was screaming for my father, ran down the stairs. And I remember being on the phone with my boyfriend at the time, and he said, "Do not drive." I said, "I have to." So I never told my father or my boyfriend what was said to me. I just said that Devan's been in an accident. I didn't say anything more than that. I drove to the hospital. I knew that whatever I was going to be life altering, because if there was some chance that my son survived the accident, that would also probably be life altering. Because I wouldn't know what kind of condition is what would he be in. So I think I was just like a zombie. I remember leaving the house. I remember getting to the hospital. I don't remember the drive in between for sure. I'm pretty sure my dad said I jumped a curb. I know that the moment I got there and he had already had his accident. So they took me into a different room and told me at that point um, that he did not make it and that his accident was fatal, but really didn't give me a whole lot of information. And I remember my knees just buckling out from under me and my dad grabbing me, but just the two of us were there. And what it was complete and utter devastation. There like you can't even believe it. And I
Yeah.
think that was probably the word that stood out for me most of these years, is that it's just unbelievable.
Right. Yeah. I can't imagine as a parent what that's like to lose a child at that age. It's like you
And
said,
today
it's
I work with
unbelievable.
and today I work with bereaved moms. It's not my niche is not grief or bereavement, though it is in so many other ways, because what I really work with is like loss, where it's the death of you and the rebirth of you is what you're trying for. Because especially when you lose a child, I think the greatest difference there, number one, is we say things like it's not expected or that it shouldn't happen, but the truth is um, it happens to all of us and it happens every day, right? When you see somebody on the news that's had a fatal accident, I myself am 53 right now, almost 54. My parents are alive. If something were to happen to me, people don't look at that as somebody's lost a child. They look at me as an adult. And the truth is, um, the reason why it's so difficult, that particular loss, is because we look at our children as a part of our future. We look at them as not, let me just rephrase that, not as a part of our future, but they are the future, right?
Right.
Our young humans are the future. So without them, it's very difficult to see the future because now the future is stuck in the past,
Yeah. Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
No, perfectly. 'Cause I think it's almost like, we look at them as our legacy. So, if they leave before we do, it's it's difficult to grasp. So, I mean, literally a piece of us um, goes with them, which I think happens with anyone we lose, but I just think more so.
But even more so. Well, because here it is, right? What you just said, it's our legacy, as if we look at them as the extension of ourself, right? I mean, think about how many moms and dads like, oh, I never got to play, I never got to, be the professional football player. Football was a big part of my life. Now my son has to go play football. Like, we want them to live on what we start because maybe we didn't make it, but hopefully they will. Like, I didn't become the doctor, but maybe my kid will. Or we always want them to have the better life than us. And so when we're and the other part of it is, Dan, um, and I'm not going to say, oh, it's not the same for moms and dads, but it's not the same for moms and dads, right? We gave birth to these babies, and when a relationship goes wrong, that's what the woman rates and prides herself on. A man rates and prides himself on his status, his ability to provide, the money that he makes. You know what I mean? When the lights go out, it's like, oh, dad, that's your fault. When something goes wrong in the family, it's on the mom. And so when it's like we were unable to protect our children in some way from life happening to them. And like, I think about it now, like, my gosh, I have nobody, I'm alone, right? Which is not true, but it's like, who do you leave stuff behind for? Who do you, as if everything you're doing, once you have children, they become your purpose, they become your identity, they become everything, which is why we lose ourselves in them.
Right.
And it's not a great place to be. So today, that's the work I do, is like, we want our identity to be our own and our life purpose to be our own, because what happens when all that's gone?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that, you know, grief and bereavement isn't, you know, your niche work, but it is a part of your work. Why did you feel that that was actually something that you wanted to help others deal with? Again, even though it's not your main focus, it's obviously part of what you do. So what was important to you to help others get through that same sort of thing?
I think the most important part of it is grief and loss comes in so many different ways, right? I myself, like I said, I have gone through being picked on and bullied and beat up. I have gone through um, becoming a single mom and living in my car for 3 months, when my son's father left. I've been abandoned and abused. You know what I mean? Like, I've gone through so many of the things in life that we may call obstacles or challenges. I've been married, I've been divorced, had a child, lost a child. Through all of these different things, the one thing is common, right? We talk about post traumatic stress disorder, we talk about trauma, but we don't talk as much and focus as much on the growth that comes from going through trauma. There are challenges and obstacles, and each one of them, whether it's the loss of a job, a business, a career, whether it's the loss of a marriage or a relationship, loss of our health in some way, loss of life, it all comes down to, there's a part of us that kind of dies with that, and we have to learn how to be reborn into the next new version of ourselves. So we have to not just learn how to get through things or just get on the other side of it. We have to learn how to thrive and become the new version of ourselves. I refer to, the caterpillar and the butterfly, and that is what each new phase of our life is all about. I mean, the caterpillar literally has to liquefy his body to death. Like he's got to die in order for that butterfly to be born. And that butterfly is beautiful. We don't look at the caterpillar like gorgeous and beautiful the way that we look at the butterfly, but the butterfly had to die and be rebirthed to be that beautiful. And that's what we need to do. If I think about the work I'm doing today, it's a gift for everything that I've gone through to be able to help other human beings in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so important because, you know, I think grief comes in waves. You never really get over it. You never really get, through it to the other side. You just evolve from it. And I think that's with everything we deal with in life. Like you said, I mean, every trial that we've gone through, every turbulent moment of our life is just part of that growing process and that ever evolving as a human being to get to where we are today. I mean, you know, being here in our you know early approaching mid 50s, we're completely different human beings than what we were 30 some years ago. But that process um, oftentimes comes with some scars,
As
and
it should,
yes.
as it should, right? Thank gosh I'm a different version of myself. What I have discovered, and to answer that original question even a little bit clearer, I have gone through so many things and I have received help in so many different ways, right? There are lots of different ways to get support, but one of the things is we get stuck. And I was stuck for so many years. And I was stuck because I was hiding behind everything I was going through. It was only once I started opening up and sharing my struggles, that's when I actually started getting the true deep connections that I really wanted and started getting the help and the healing that I needed as well. So I think that my gift has always been connecting with people on such a deep, intimate level because I share something so deep and intimate about myself pretty much right from the beginning. Because the moment we start talking and we start sharing, the minute I say, "Oh, I've gone through a significant loss," immediately you will be able to relate to me, right? Because you've also gone through a significant loss. It doesn't have to be the same loss. None of them are. Even if we both lost children, they're not the same loss because we all have our different relationships. People have said to me, "I'm sure that you wish it would have been you instead of your son." No, I don't wish it would have been me instead of my son. I don't wish it would have been him. I don't wish it would have been me because he was only 17. To lose a mom at 17 is also devastating and very challenging at that young, very vulnerable stage of his life, to not have the guidance that he would have needed continued from me. So I think that all of it is so important to get that support. But when you open up and share right away, what you're doing is you're creating a safe space for that open, vulnerable conversation to take place. That's why you are doing what you're doing with this podcast, by providing a platform that is a safe, open space for somebody to be able to share like the depth of their heart.
Right. Right. Now, what was that process like for you to be able to open up and show that vulnerability? Because really, that's it, you've got to be incredibly brave to be vulnerable, because there's times where we throw ourselves out there and you don't get that you know reciprocal return that you're hoping for, and sometimes you end up now with another scar that you didn't think. So
Yeah,
so
I do. I'm glad you're even saying that, because the truth is that's exactly what happened. I have always gone through, and you mentioned in the very beginning that you and I met through Justin Shank's community, and Justin talks about, that those 5 core people in your life. And I will say I've always been the bruiser. Right. I know maybe your audience knows what the bruiser is, but I've always been the person. I've been the go-to person for people. Anytime friends, family, colleagues were going through anything, they would always come to me because I could help them see a bigger picture, right? Which is what makes it so obvious to be a coach today. But because I was always the go-to person for everybody, when I was now the person that was in the desperate need of help and I needed them to go to them, nobody really knew how to be there for me. They were like, we don't know what to do for you. You've always been the person we go to. And now, not only are you going through the most devastating moment of your life, now you actually have to teach the people around you on how to be there for you, because they don't know. They don't know what to say. They're afraid to say anything. I would just get ignored. People would just like hope that I would walk away, like hope that I didn't see them. So it was almost like I was alienated. I was, so that in itself was very hard. And to be quite honest, I unintentionally dumped myself into a bottle of wine because I couldn't go to the market. I couldn't cook for myself. So I would just go to this local tavern that I used to always go to for wings. And I had an addiction to wings. The wine just was a bonus. And when you're in a bar, people will buy you more wine. So unintentionally, I was now, instead of drinking 1 glass of wine once a week, I'm now drinking a glass of wine almost every day. And when you're emotional, that just feels like a whole bottle, And so I found myself on the floor a lot, just crying with nothing coming out.
Yeah. How tough was that for you to actually seek help? Being the person who others went to. Because I know for me, a lot of times it's difficult for me to actually go out and ask for help, because I am, again, similar to you. I've been that guy that people come to and help them through it. So there's times where I almost feel as though um, asking for help is just a sign of weakness, that I'm supposed to be the strong one. I'm supposed to be the person with the answers, that sort of thing. But I've gotten better at it with age. Thank God for that. But what was that process like for you? Did it come easily, or was it a little bit of a battle for you?
It was not a battle for me. Now, one of the things that I had gotten very good at, which if anybody out there knows me, I can talk. So it's never been something. I've been called a lot of things. Quiet's not one of them. But I had the ability to talk. And I had a lot of really great girlfriends who were the mothers of my son's friends. And I had a very good core group of friends. And only 1 or 2 that were really could dive deep with me and hang with me and not, be scared of being around me. So I had a few really great girlfriends that way that I could just open up and talk to. And just the ability to talk out loud is huge. Even if you don't have to be sitting on a therapist counseling couch in order to do it. Just being able to let it out is so helpful. And one of the things, I don't know how I even had the wisdom to tell it to myself, but it was brilliant when I look back, is the very next morning. And when I say that, only hours after we got home, because it's not like we slept, but I stood in the mirror and I remember the sunlight just pouring in through the bathroom mirror. It was going to be a beautiful, sunshiny day. It was in April. And I remember just looking in the mirror and telling myself, Dan, like literally out loud, that no matter what, every day you have to get up, brush your teeth, wash your face, get dressed, and go to 7-Eleven and get coffee and be in front of people, no matter what. I said, this could kill you. We could die. Like that is literally the statement I said to myself out loud. I don't know how I said it. I don't know why I remember it. Probably because it was very it was a very crucial thing to tell myself for the sake of my life. I really thought that I didn't even know why I should still be here.
Right.
And I would never do any, like, I would never do anything to hurt myself. But at the same time, I really could care less if something happened.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But so that's what I did to seek support. I didn't seek out the support intentionally, but my go-to way of now dealing with so many different things that had happened in my life was to talk about it.
Yeah.
So that part
That's
came natural.
that's I'm glad it came more natural for you than what it does for me. So
I
um
think that once you start doing it, and I think it's really important that you have those right people to do that with. If you have people that can't get into the depth of emotional depth, then yeah, of course, it's definitely harder.
yeah, that's true. And it was interesting what you said about early on where, it seemed like there were some people who just kind of wish that you would leave the room. And I think that's kind of a human trait where people, don't know what to say to you when you're going through that. So they prefer to avoid it completely, not say anything, where, quite frankly, it's like just say something. Like it doesn't even have to be about what happened, but like just try to restore some sense of normalcy to that person's life, because there's enough other crap going on in the background that just even like, hey, you want to go get coffee or, just something, just have a conversation with that person. I think for whatever reason, as human beings, like we don't know how to deal with it because, we don't know. So
Scary.
we
It's
avoid it.
so scary though, too, right? It's every parent's worst nightmare. So we don't want to face it at all. And it's like we don't know what to say. So we either don't say anything or we say the most crazy, foolish things ever. I've had people say the like things that you just would never even expect, right? I had a neighbor who lived right next door and, occasionally would wave, since the accident. And I happened to see her at the Wawa. I was really having a tough time. It was the 11th month anniversary. And I was 1 month away from that 1 year anniversary, which is probably the hardest for any bereaved parent. And I was really struggling. I had my headset in. I was on the phone with my girlfriend from California. And my neighbor saw me and she goes, "Oh, hi, Pratiti. How are you?" And I said, "Today is 11 months without Devan." And she, without skipping a beat, reached her hand over, touched my shoulder, and said, "Well, on a brighter note, I'm having twins."
Wow.
And I I just wanted to die, to be honest. I closed my eyes and tears just rolled down my face. And I said, "I am so happy for you." And then she just continued on because her daughter was with her. And she's like, "So Lindsay doesn't know if she's going to have a brother and a brother and a sister and a sister and a brother." I'm like, "I got to go." I'm like, "I'm so happy for you, but I have to go." And honestly, I just felt like I was going to faint because I didn't need to hear it. I felt like, my gosh, you could have just let me watch you and see your belly grow and I would have figured it out. I didn't need, like, it was, and I'm sure she had the best of intentions. She was trying to cheer me up, but didn't even acknowledge what I had said first.
Right.
And that just came from probably her freaking out and not knowing what to say. So just tried to change the subject right away. So it was done out of good intention, just not helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So with everything you've been through, is there one attribute of who you are today, um, that trying to think the proper way to word this. Um, like, what do you think the biggest growth um, through everything you've been through has been, to you personally?
I think one of the lessons that I have learned the most, which was on a very unconscious level, and until I really dove deeper into myself, but being able to a few things, being able to hold some space for yourself, allow yourself some love and compassion and kindness, and be patient with yourself. That's really hard to do when you don't even know to do it and you don't know what that looks like. So I would say people would be like, well, what does that even look like? One of the things that I am such a firm believer on, and it helps with everything in your life, is just having really great solid routines. And what I mean by that is like a morning routine or a nighttime routine. When you're going through things in your life, we won't even talk about just that part of it, but so much is devastating, right? My devastation was losing my child. Your devastation could be something completely else, and it doesn't have to be greater or less greater than the other. But having meditation in your life, eating really good foods, taking some time out to take a bath, like doing things where you can offer yourself some peace and quiet and love and pampering is probably a really good way of being able to comfort yourself, or learning that skill of being able to comfort yourself, or knowing where to go for comfort. I knew when I was really struggling, I could go to a YouTube video and find babies laughing to change that around for me, because you can take yourself down to a very like dark space. I've been in a lot of dark spaces, and I think that the biggest thing you can do for yourself is know the tools to take you out of that dark space.
Yeah. And I
So
think
you don't
that's,
have to depend on somebody else, because this is where suicide happens. When you have to wait for somebody else to rescue you and you don't know how to rescue yourself, you could be totally screwed.
yeah. And I think that's so important because I think that's different for all of us, So what works for you may not work for me and vice versa. And I think that's the thing that, you know, we have to figure out on our own. What is that that will get us to snap out of it? And I think that's so important that there's not a broad stroke for all of us. It's not sitting down and meditating for every one of us. Like for me, it's getting out into the woods and hiking, and walking the dog. Um, big way for
Listening
me
to
to
certain mu-
reset.
listen, listening to certain music. I'm a big stand-up comedy person, so I'll go straight to comedy. I know who to call right away
Yeah,
when I'm not feeling that way. I know what music to listen to. I know what to watch. When things are really challenging for you in your life, I think it's really important to just take a few minutes and write down, what do you really love? What makes you happy? What automatically makes you laugh, smile, feel good? If it's flowers, go out into nature, go for a walk, get in the pool, whatever those things are, know them right away. And the earlier you can know them, the more you can offer that to yourself. I
yeah,
think that's such a huge game changer.
yeah. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Judy, we're almost out of time. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think would be beneficial for the listeners?
I think that one message I really want to share with anybody out there is, don't ever think this one thought, why is this happening to me? It doesn't have, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I want you to replace that with, I'm not saying it's okay for this to be happening, but just don't try to avoid it and resist it. Allow it to penetrate that it is happening, because I think one of the biggest things that I want to achieve at the end of my life is knowing that I was able to not like love every experience that I've had, but been able to embrace it in a way that allowed me to process it in a way that was healthy, and not just get through it, but thrive on the other side of it, to be able to help another human being through it. Because life is always going to offer us challenges, and Obstacles are not the things blocking our path. Obstacles are the path. You have to grow through what you go through. And our goal in life should really be to take a look at what's going on for us and use those to strengthen ourselves, build up those resilient muscles, and help the next human being through difficult times. Because if we're always helping the next human and we're all doing that, it's much easier to get help and get through the things that we need to get through that are challenging without medication, because there's so much that we could do to help ourselves. Don't just go to a pill and expect it to change your life, because it's not going to ever.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great last tidbit to throw at the listeners. I think that's really important for people to understand that. Pratiti, how can people find you on the internet? How can they connect with you if they are interested in any of your services as a life coach, or just want to kind of talk to you about bereavement or anything else?
I am on all the social medias. You can either see me as Pratiti Pathek, and you can look up results by design coaching.com. That is my website. But if you go to results by design coaching on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, you'll find me there as well. Yeah, reach out. There are links on there to jump on a 30-minute chat with me. You can just even come to me and I can point you some tools that will really help you in the situation immediately.
Love it. Love it. So, Pratiti, as you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People, Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. So it's one of the little things that Pratiti does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place.
So one of the things that Pratiti does every single day, or as often as she can, is I am all about stand-up comedy. So it's so opposite of the life coaching and being serious and helping with like difficult moments. But I am always kind of doing my Indian accent. I'm always making fun of everything around me in my life, because I think that laughter is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to yourself and to every person around you. If you can make somebody smile, laugh, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what you're doing. I've opened up the door for mother and daughter and said, good morning, ladies, and it brightened up a little girl's face, Laughter is what I give as much as I possibly can, and I do it all day long.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Dude, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure our listeners got a lot out of this. And for those out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. While you're there, pick up one of the copies of my books. And again, thank you so much for the time, Pratiti. This is a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Dan. I loved it.
You bet.
And I love the work you're doing. So thank you for being you.
Thank you.